Nigeria's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu on Wednesday, June 12 Democracy Day parade and celebration stumbled and fell as he was climbing the parade vehicle. While it is totally normal for anyone to stumble and fall while walking or climbing, this was particularly embarrassing to Nigerians. They wondered why the people surrounding him partially forgot that he's old, weak, and would always need their support for him not to fall or stumble. Nigerians also expressed their anger towards their president and his administration by chanting minimum wage as he rode by.
Minimum wage! 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 What? Minimum wage! Minimum wage! We what? Minimum wage! Minimum wage! We what? Minimum wage! Minimum wage! We what? Minimum wage!
That is to say, they are unhappy with the minimum wage raise saga between the federal government of Nigeria and the Labour Congress. Tinubu is not the first president to stumble or fall. Other presidents, like the President of the United States of America, Joe Biden, who appear physically unfit, have also tripped and fallen several times. Also, during the Democracy Day parade and celebration, Tinubu unveiled a portrait of himself rather than honoring MKO Abiola, the man of the people who won the June 12, 1993 presidential election, which was later cancelled. At this point, Nigerians seem to be totally unhappy and dissatisfied with the Tinubu-led administration. Listen to the TVC News Report and Arise News for their great analysis as always. And please subscribe to this channel, like and share. Thank you. We'll see you in our next one. Bye.
It's now time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. Of course, we do start at home, where Nigeria yesterday marked 25 years of unbroken democracy, at a time when several of its neighbors in West Africa have had military coups. Democracy Day holds particular significance for Nigerians. It falls on June 12th, the anniversary of Nigeria's freest and fairest election. It was a ballot that was inexplicably annulled by the military government in 1993, denying the winner, Chief Moshood Abiola, his mandate and cracking down on the pro-democracy protests that followed. One highlight of the Democracy Day parade that has made headlines was President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's slip as he was mounting the parade vehicle during yesterday's ceremony at Eagle Square, Abuja. Tinubu was set for the traditional inspection of guards of honor when a clumsy step led to a tumble in the parade vehicle. However, the president, while commenting on his fall at the parade ground at the 25th Democracy Day anniversary dinner, which was held at the State House Conference Center, made light humor of the incident.
Early this morning, I had a swagger, and it's on the social media. They are confused whether I was doing Puga or doing Baba Rega. But it is a day to celebrate democracy while doing the ballet for the day. I'm a traditionally Yoruba boy. I did my dobale. Democracy is a day that is worthy of falling for.
Some presidential swagger. Rufai?
Yeah, so Let me talk about other things around the day first. At first, it was Democracy Day yesterday, and it means a lot for a lot of Nigerians out there that suffered the inhumanity of the military administration, because a lot of people actually did suffer. Suffer in debt, suffer in incarceration, and all of those families. And we must get to a point where we say never again must those things happen to Nigerians. And for those Nigerians that even with the return to democracy still suffered during NSAS, we must say never again. That's why I really support what Shehu Sani did say yesterday. As some of the people still incarcerated from NSAS, we should remember that we're in a democracy. And President Tinubu should do the needful. Because at that point in time, they were fighting the hegemony of the military. And in a democratic government, people have a right for peaceful demonstration. And many actors should not turn those demonstrations into violence. There were demonstrations yesterday across the country, which was welcomed because of the hardship. As of this morning, I was getting an intel that rice is now 90,000 naira per bag. Tomato is unabated. Cost of living is at an all-time high. And this was the result of the policies of President Tinubu, which is not nice on the people. He says he removed subsidy, but another government document was claiming that subsidy is still being paid. So these are challenges that people are facing, and they have a right to be able to ventilate in a democracy. The hallmark of democracy is being able to come out and protest and ventilate. He also led that charge, even in the military government. And we cannot deny him of the great work he did, during that democratic struggle. So we give him his kudos, we give him his flowers. The part I'm taking aback at is the hero worship. President Tinubu should understand that June 12th is about the sacrifices of the people that passed and Bashir MKO Abiola. Any attempt to bring up a portrait of President Tinubu is not a nice one. It's not the time to get into Bashir MKO Abiola's parade. Because this man suffered, he suffered in prison before he finally passed. And I think this day should be there to commemorate those that really went through the sad and bitter times. People that lost their life, the likes of the Parawanis of this world, and many other people that he also has mentioned, and which will be paid tribute to later this morning. As regards the fall, anybody can fall. So I don't see the meaning being read to it and all of that. And he made light of it yesterday by saying that was a swagger. He dobaled, as he said, A lot of people were already trying to mute out the mantra and say, Olule, and all of that yesterday. But he said he dobaled. Anybody can look for. And I think the words of Atiku Abubakar was very instructive, checking on him and seeing how he was doing after the fall. And I'm happy he stayed through the event, so it was perfectly all right. And also Peter Obi extended the same courtesies. So I don't think that's a big story, but we should never lose track of the essence of democracy and people that actually suffered and died for it. I don't think President Tinubu taking the glory alone in that portrait was the best thing to do. No.
Yesterday, I quoted a number of books from Joe Igbokwe to Abimbola Bordering to Professor Omar Mori's The Tales of June 12, to Abraham Oshoko's book, and similar other books written on June 12. And that it is very important for Nigerians to take a look at that bibliography, a growing bibliography, about that critical moment in Nigerian history, so that they can have a proper perspective in terms of who the heroes and the villains of that process were. Now, yesterday, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, in the early day broadcast, paid tribute to the heroes. He didn't mention the villains. If we were going to talk about the villains, he would probably talk about groups like Association for Better Nigeria, ABN, led by Ato Nzeribe and Abimbola Davis. These were the people, involved in that Association for Better Nigeria. And then judges who gave kangaroo midnight rulings, to distort the process. But in any case, it was a turning point in Nigerian history at a time when civil society, the media, groups like Nanicon, Nadeco, Concerned Nigerians came up and said, never again should we have the kind of brutalization, dictatorship that we had under the military. So June 12 provides Nigerians an opportunity to compare and to agree with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu that, in fact, democracy 25 years later, has served us in a significant manner, to the extent that the people now have voice in the process. Even if I think some of the people, exercising that right to express themselves, sound very idiotic sometimes on some of the platforms that they use. But at least, we have a country where nobody can just dictate to you and get away with it. So that's part of the game, and also representational democracy, participatory democracy. Even if there are people who think that there is still a lot, and indeed they are right, that we still have to do with regard to institutions and electoral reform. So on a general basis, the speech by the president yesterday, he talked about these heroes of democracy, the importance of democracy, his commitment to continue to serve the people. Where he was talking about the heroes, I thought that MKO Abiola, who was a martyr, this symbol of the democratic process, deserved more than being mentioned in parentheses. Kudirat Abiola deserved even being mentioned in parentheses. But that was a speech that his speechwriters wrote for him. He talked in that speech also about labor, organized labor, and his commitment to the dignity of workers and all of that. However, at the main event, at the Eagle Square, yesterday, two major incidents. Beautiful parade. The military did very well. Even the police was part of that parade. And I kept saying off camera that it was very good to see that Nigerian policemen, can also be so professional. Because they were marching, they fitted into the parade, they were, quite smart on display, and they dressed very well. And I said, these are the real policemen, the ones that win awards at international assignments, not the ones that stay at checkpoints and ask you, what you carry? Where is your fire extinguisher? And that, it's good to see a different image of the Nigerian police in a professional setting. Very complex, beautiful, quick march and slow march drill out there. Very entertaining. Now, two other incidents. The president, slumping as he tried to climb the parade vehicle. Now, I was complaining yesterday that, look, those guards that were around him, what were they doing? And that maybe some people should be sent to the guard room for, not paying enough attention for the commander-in-chief to fall. It looked embarrassing on camera, but I think Mr. Bayo Ononuga made the point when he said, well, it just shows that a president is also a human being. He's not superhuman. And that after all, President Biden fell. We had the case of George W. Bush falling. We had Putin, Vladimir Putin, also falling before and tripping. So these are human beings. They are not superhuman. Although I joked here yesterday off camera again that, you see, I said it, that there are demons in Aso Rock, that those demons, maybe they followed the president to the Eagle Square to go and make him trip. But, that was on the lighter side. Now, but I think the point, the president himself, I appreciate his sense of humor. He took it, in a light, manner. He said, "Whoa, it's Dobale, and democracy is worth falling for," and all of that. Okay, that's a humorous way to look at this. I don't think anybody should dwell on that. These things happen. As for Waziri Adamawa Atiku Abubakar saying, I think all is well with him, that's a bit on the sarcastic side. As for Mr. Peter Obi of the Labour Party saying, well, we should not be celebrating, what we were celebrating is not democracy, but state capture and all of that. Well, a day like Democracy Day should not be a day for people to take pot shots, to play cheap political games. I think it should be a day, for reflection for all of us and to see how we can come up with ideas about how, to strengthen institutions and move the country forward. Now, the part of that ceremony yesterday that I find distasteful is the unveiling of what they call the largest portrait in the world. Now, what do they mean by that? Have they submitted that painting for assessment by the Guinness World Records body to determine that that is the largest. Who made that assessment? And I thought that was a very sycophantic, distasteful unveiling of the president's portrait. They can do the president's portrait. You know, maybe they could have done that at the dinner to present it. But to take his image to the Eagle Square, to say this is the world's largest portrait and all of that, no, I like many Nigerians, find that very distasteful. And in any case, it's not as if it's an excellently put together portrait. There are artists that could have done
a lot better,
a much better job.
job.
As I said, off camera again yesterday, I would have preferred a situation whereby maybe that painting would be a collage of the heroes of June 12. You know, Chief MKO Abiola right at the center, surrounded by all those heroic Nigerians at all levels, you know, maybe symbols representing them, saying these are the people who made that sacrifice. But to use that occasion at Eagle Square to engage in odious hero worshipping, display of sycophancy by the National Council for Arts and Culture, I find that really objectionable. We are not in Idi Amin's Uganda. We are not in Hastings Kamuzu Banda's Malawi. We are not in Jombede Bokasa's Central African Republic. We are not in Sassou Nguesso's Republic of Congo. We are in Nigeria. And part of the celebration should be drawing attention to values. They should not keep that portrait permanently at the Eagle Square. I hope they will go and find a place to keep it, because to keep it there will be an affront. If we're talking democracy, we should not turn it into personality cult worship. That's my point.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Abati. I want to go back to the statements made by Senator Shehu Sani at the anniversary dinner, specifically when he addressed President Tinubu and he said, "You are the father of protests. Any young protester in Nigeria learned from you. You funded them. You built the culture around protests. And in the spirit of that, I'm just paraphrasing now. He said, don't allow your struggle to be remembered for contrary, that you struggled for democracy. Then when you came into office, you had nothing new to offer." And I thought that was a very profound point, because when you look at liberation struggles from the developing world, you look at around Africa, the ANC of South Africa and their liberation struggle. You look at Robert Mugabe of Zimbabwe. There are so many icons that you can look at who were fathers of democracy and independence in their nations, who unfortunately their legacy became tainted because when they came into office, when it became time to govern, they were unable to live out the ideals that they fought for. So I think that was a very profound point, that as you were an activist, remember what your activism stood for in those days. Now that you're in a position of power and influence, President Tinubu referred to himself as a beneficiary of democracy in his speech yesterday of Democracy Day. Let it not be about being a beneficiary of democracy, but let it be about a continuation of activism for democracy. Another point he made is that a national anthem, a pledge or constitution cannot unite a nation. A nation is united by the ideals of freedom, equity, and justice. Very valid point, because we can't continue to beat around the bush with all of these side attractions. Yes, a national anthem is important. The pledge is important. Nobody is dismissing the value of those things. But for now, we are saying, let's look at the fundamental issues. How much of an investment and how much work is being done to ensure that those ideals, those fundamentals of democracy are being enjoyed as the dividends of democracy for all Nigerians today. Overall, a beautiful celebration, beautiful seeing the march, the march past, the slow march, the fast march, and the display of culture. The image that was revealed, the symbolism of June 12th is very important, and it's something that we have to stand on principle about. We know what June 12th stands for, and it's important that there are no attempts made to rewrite the history of what June 12th means. And in the spirit of that, we go into our next story, which is that the June 12 struggles were the realization on the need for everyone to get involved in politics and governance. It awoke the political consciousness of Nigerians, and as President Tinubu puts it, it was the equivalent of the battle against colonial rule by our founding fathers that resulted in the gaining of Nigeria's independence in 1960. Alongside Kudirat Abiola, Alfred Rane, and Shehu Musa Yaradua, the likes of Nobel laureate Professor Wole Soyinka, Chief Ayo Adebanjo, Frank Kokori, the current President Bola Tinubu, Chief Ayo Opadokun, Dr. Beko Ransom Kuti, Gani Fawemi, among many others. Let's take a look at Chief M.K. Abiola, one of the heroes of democracy.
Brought to the fore of Nigeria's political table. The issues surrounding what was and still described as
Chief MKO Abiola, presidential candidate of SDP and winner of the annulled election. On June 11, 1994, Abiola, at the Epetedo area of Lagos, declared himself the democratically elected president of Nigeria. He was subsequently arrested and detained. He died in detention.
I mean, it's very sombering, and may his soul continue to rest, you know. And I extend my condolences to the family of MK Abiola, you know, my colleague here, daughter of MK Abiola, Tundu, because they lost a father at a very early age. And apart from Abiola trying to serve nationally, he was also their dear father. So my condolences to them. Apart from, you know, June 12. Prior to June 12, let's talk about Abiola. Abiola loomed large. Abiola was a pillar of sports in Africa. Abiola was very patriotic, had a team called Abiola Babes. I think there's a video caption of when Abiola had to drive the team bus in Zambia when they went to go play a match, and he still had to go catch up a business meeting. That was what Abiola was. When the Cameroonian team did very well in '86, Abiola gave them presents. When they, you know, the Cameroonian team did well, so well, and also leading up to the 1990 World Cup, all their heroics, Abiola rewarded them. He was a man that his struggles was even for restitution of all the colonialists took away during slave trade. So apart from being president, he was a man of so many parts. He did a lot for culture. He did a lot for music. A lot of people don't know Abiola owned a record label. And he did a lot for promotion of music. In fact, he was also a singer himself, you know. And he did a lot for the arts and culture. He also did a lot for business, you know, with the company, International Telephony, you know, company, where they did a lot as regards, you know, rural telephony and other things like that. So he was a man of many parts. He also did a lot for advancement of religion. The universities too benefited from his generosity. That's the kind of man he was. Studied as an accountant, very, you know, sturdy intellectual, did a lot for the progress of his country. And that's why his words can never be forgotten. He also did a lot for the promotion of the agricultural sector. But in going forward, what I would suggest that the government should do is this. Apart from all the flickerings of, you know, June 12th that is online and things like that, what we should do is to set up a monumental June 12th library online that people can go through with VR headsets. You can pay a token amount and click on the website that takes you into a virtual museum of June 12th, where archival materials, documentary, and everything around that time, using a crawler system to crawl out every material, newspaper clippings, and everything around that time, should be put in an archival material online where people can be able to see. So that also Nigerians in diaspora will be able to see, and also Nigerians, you know, locally and everything. So that with a token amount, a June 12 struggle can be seen, and it could be curated to be a 3 or 4 hour, you know, cyclical tour museum that is virtual, that is also online. I think it's something we can work at to be able to have and make it one of the biggest and the richest compendium of historicity and analysis of June 12 thus far. You know, it could culminate back even from, you know, the 1990s up to all his political endeavor and things like that. So these are things we need to be able to archive the memory properly. Because you see, revisionists are already telling the story in different dimensions. And we need to be able to keep history intact. And this is what I thought that we could have done yesterday, rather than this big portrait that we are having. So I think that's one for the future. We should have a compendium, a proper virtual museum of June 12 that can be accessed from every part of the world. That also involves its manifesto documents. Because the Farewell to Poverty manifesto document, you can hardly see in public today. It's stuck somewhere, maybe in libraries abroad.
Okay. It's good that we're talking about Chief MKO Abiola this morning. We've been talking about him since yesterday. Even if, the injustice done to him still continues in other ways.
Yeah.
You find one government that will suddenly remember that MKO Abiola was once a key player in the politics of Nigeria, and then you find, another government trying to treat him as if it didn't matter. The people who have been most unfair to him, unfortunately, are the people from his own part of the country, his own kinsmen, in power. But the less said about that, the better. However, I think what is important here is for everyone to be reminded of the Ekpetedo Declaration. The Ekpetedo is, a suburb around the Lagos Island. And in the midst of all that struggle about annulment and all of that, Chief MKO Abiola was even advised by some people to run away from Nigeria, to go and form a government in exile. But he refused, which was his heroism. And then he had that Ekpetedo Declaration. What was the title of that Ekpetedo Declaration? It is titled, Enough is Enough. Yesterday I said, the slogan was never again to military rule. But, he titled the Ekpetedo Declaration, which became, the turning point in that struggle for democracy. He said, enough is enough of military rule. Enough is enough of square pegs in round holes. And that what the military had done, in fact, he used the word soldier politicians who had captured Nigeria, that they had introduced into the lexicography of Nigerian politics a strange word called annulment, contrary to the will, the wish of the people of Nigeria as freely expressed on June 12, 1993. And as he also pointed out, the freest, the fairest election ever conducted in the history of Nigeria. It was shortly after that Ekpetedo Declaration that we had, via BBC, that he was arrested by the Abacha junta. And then, of course, he never came out of that alive. He died in detention. He paid the ultimate price, in the process of that detention. And this is a heroism. This is a martyrdom that, people should remember. The fact that a man won an election, the military, they said, I think General Babangida at the time said he was under pressure. Yeah. So in other words, to say he was not alone. In other words, some people say, General Babangida was a Maradona, and they had used the hand of God, like Maradona in the World Cup match with England in 1986, I think, to wrong-foot Nigerians. So this is the background to it. But I keep saying that Chief MKO Abiola was not alone. It was a pan-Nigeria struggle, including people like Commodore Dan Suleiman, Frank Kukuri, Olisa Agbakoba, Chima Ubani, Bagada Kauto, Dapo Yomi, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, as he now is, and so many other people across Nigeria. But the danger with June 12 is that eventually people try to reduce it to a Southwest agenda. Because it was only the Southwest states that declared June 12, the holiday. But eventually, I think good reason has prevailed to remember, to recall that it was not about a Yoruba agenda. What happened was that in 1999, the Yorubas of the Southwest had to be pacified by, the owners of Nigeria, as some people have described them. I don't think anybody should be the owner of Nigeria. We are all owners. We are all stakeholders. Decided that, well, maybe for peace reasons, the presidency should be zoned to the southwest. And we ended up with Olufalaye and Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, on the PDP side. But you see, Nigeria has not yet, the wounds have not been healed.
Yeah.
A lot of Nigerians are in pain. And it is most unfortunate that even yesterday, on the occasion of the celebration of 25 years of democracy, many Nigerians went to Ikeja under bridge. And they were chorusing, "Eben power, we are hungry." It reminds me of Ngugiwa Tiongo's writings, was it, where he was, one of the characters in one of his plays was asking, one of his novels was asking the question, what has Uhuru brought us?
A grain of wheat.
Eh?
A grain of wheat.
Yes. What has Uhuru brought us? We that lost our sons, lost our fathers. And this is the thing about liberation, about freedom fighting. At the end of the day, the people look back and, there is a tinge of regret. The 2012 struggle was appropriately described as the second liberation of Nigeria. The first liberation was liberation from colonial rule in 1960. The second liberation was from the military. As I said again yesterday, it is further most unfortunate that we have reached a point now where even the military will say, well, yeah, civilians have taken over power. They are accusing us of this and that. But what have these civilians themselves, what have they done?
Yeah.
What level of discipline are they demonstrating?
Yeah.
Many of these things that we are refurbishing now, renovating, is the legacy of the military.
Yeah.
The first development plan up to the fourth development plan. I'm not making a justification. I think as we celebrate democracy, we have to take a look at the leadership recruitment process and to make sure that the persons we recruit to lead the process are persons who have enough ability to make a difference. The best way we can strengthen democracy is indeed to live up to the principles espoused in Chief MKO Abiola's Ekwetedo Declaration, Enough is Enough, and in his manifesto, which was titled Hope 93. Abiola spoke about abolishing poverty,
Farewell to poverty,
building institutions, giving opportunities to Nigerians. It is unfortunate that, many years later, we are still at that same point that he wanted to correct. It would have been easier for people to go and erect their portraits on the Atlantic Ocean if we are at a point where we had been able to make that difference. But we're not there yet. But anyway, the same hope that Chief MKO Abiola preached in 1993, we now have the government of today also talking about renewed hope, which means that, within him, President Tinubu sees a connection between his own aspirations and, the projections, the propositions of Chief MKO Abiola. How far you can go with that comparison remains to be seen.
Right, now, as we continue to extol Chief MKO Abiola, let's take a look at, let's go back in history and let's take a look at what he had to say once upon a time.
Faith on the part of government, all matters relating to the election should have gone to the tribunal set up by law for such cases and should only have been initiated by persons or bodies that had genuine interest in the election. Instead, we are being told that the judiciary behaved so badly that I, Moshood Kashima Wolawale Abiola, should be penalized for his conduct. It is incredible. In view of all this, I find the conclusion unfortunate but inescapable that the federal military government is guilty of bad faith, pure and simple. No one has accused me of any offense against any known electoral law or regulation. The people of this country went to polls on Saturday, June 12, 1993, and without let or hindrance chose me as their president. Didn't they? They did.
Right, Chief MKO Abiola, it's profound listening to it, especially so many years later. You find that we're still battling many of the same challenges. May his soul continue to rest in peace, and may the ideals he stood for continue to be fought for. May they prevail, and may democracy reign and live long in Nigeria. All right, we now go to our next story. As the Nigeria Labour Congress yesterday stressed that the organised labour had not reached any agreement with the federal government and members of the organised private sector on the base figure for a national minimum wage, as well as its other components of the remuneration. However, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has declared that Nigeria will only pay what it can afford as new minimum wage for workers, but hinted at possible changes to the final figure. The president spoke yesterday night at the State House Conference Center at the 25th Democracy Day anniversary dinner. He urged the National Assembly to expect his memorandum. Speaking specifically to the leadership of the National Assembly, represented by the President of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, on the national minimum wage issue, Tinubu said the government would do what is expected, but would also pay what it can afford. At the last sitting of the Tripartite Committee on Minimum Wage in Abuja, both the government side and representatives of the private sector had made a final offer of 62,000 naira, while organized labor represented by NLC and Trade Union Congress came down from their earlier demand of 594,000 naira to 250,000 naira. So the jury is still out, of course. Yeah. We're still stuck on the same figures. Rufai, where do you think we'll go from here?
We're still stuck on the same figures. And this, when you look at this strife of workers and government, it dates even longer than June 12th. Longer than June 12th. And that's why when we were talking about June 12th the other day, General Babangida owes us a book. We need to be able to get its own historical context of what happened. Secondly, now, the government went ahead to say, we are going to send an executive bill or pass an executive bill forward. You've not agreed with Labour. Labour is in on 250. Will President Tinubu make it more than that 62? Only time will tell. So where is the respect for the workers? It is going to be incumbent on whatever President Tinubu finally pushes forward. The Tripartite Committee has given him all the sides. Labour is talking 250, he's talking 62. But please, one thing we'd like to remind President Tinubu is, whatever you're going to decide, let it be reflective of the realities on ground. Hope you realize that rice is 90,000 naira as we speak. And things are going really south for the people. And please, Labour too, it has to be said, after we sort out this minimum wage debacle, then we need to talk about the productivity of the Nigerian workforce. Because we cannot sort out minimum wage and have a workforce that is not productive. That part also needs to be addressed. So we'll wait till we see a finality to this. Probably President Tinubu will surprise with the democracy they give. So time will tell. I don't want to comment too much on this. There's been a lot of haggling back and forth. But we know the numbers, and let's see how it pans out.
Okay, yesterday in its Democracy Day national broadcast, the president talked about labor relations. The paragraphs immediately following the paragraphs where he talked about economic reforms. And at the dinner in the evening, some people went and ate jollof rice and pepper soup on our behalf, but it's okay, fine. They have their guest list. Even if they had invited me, I probably would not have been able to go due to other commitments. At least I attended the one by the Lagos State House of Assembly, where we had a very robust discussion on Democracy Day. However, he talked about it in the morning. He said, look, government is committed to economic reform. Government is committed to dialogue, cooperation, rather than conflict, and that he will send an executive bill to the National Assembly. And that he will not turn his back on the people of Nigeria. He reassured us that he will do what is fair, on behalf of everybody. And that government has not in any way tried to pressurize Labour. So he also reassured the Labour. Where we are now, Labour has refused to go on a second strike. They say they are waiting for the president. Now, my concern here is that the president now is the one going to take the fall for whatever he decides. Mm-hmm. The better strategy would have been, to isolate the president and not put him at the center of it. But now everybody is waiting for the president's decision. The gap between 62,000 naira and the 250,000 naira that Labour is asking for. Joe Ajero in Switzerland, in Geneva, said it's not a margin, it's a wide gulf between 65,000 naira and 250,000 naira. Now, what will the government of Nigeria decide? But whatever is resolved at the end of the day, I think that, what should be done should be in the interest of everybody, to respect the integrity of workers, to ensure that there is proper negotiation, and for good reason to prevail at the end of the day. Of course, the president will send a bill, to the National Assembly, because the national minimum wage is a matter of law. The reason this tripartite negotiation is taking place is because the 2019 law, which has a lifespan of 5 years, expired the beginning of, in the first week of April. And that was why the president set up a 37-person tripartite committee led by Alhaji Abba Haji in January. But we hope that these negotiations will not run into a ditch. The negotiation is useful, but we hope that it will be resolved.
All right. Yesterday, Peter Obi made reference to what he called classical state capture. Why do I bring this up? I bring this up because when you look at other oil-producing nations, Nigeria currently has the lowest minimum wage. Angola recently increased minimum wage to $120, meaning a cleaner in the Angolan civil service currently earns $120. That's a fellow oil-producing nation. I go back to classical state capture. You see the big wigs, the big oil companies are migrating out of Nigeria and they're heading to Angola. Ease of doing business, less corruption. It's easier to get things done. Now, we need to deal with the foundation of this issue. While this negotiation happens, it'll continue to be a moving goalpost if inflation continues to run. If all of our key economic indices continue to be out of control, this issue of minimum wage is going to be an ongoing conversation, because even if it's 250,000, in a matter of months, that 250,000 will be decayed away by inflation. So the conversation also needs to happen in tandem with the conversation about what are we doing to repair the state, the state or the current state of state capture. What are we doing to ensure that Nigeria remains investor-friendly? What are we doing to ensure that the foreign currency that we need to sustain this economy, the inflation remains down, the insecurity situation is also stabilized? So all of those conversations need to be happen as we await for this executive order. We do hope that it's reflective of the conditions on the ground.